comes to Malcolm in the Middle, Life Still Unfair, I'm going to be honest and say it was better than I was expecting it to be. Firstly, I really enjoyed the humour side of things. I really thought that they still had it, whether it be Malcolm and his continuous overthinking and self-hate, seeing Reese get up to all sorts of shenanigans, and then just Hal going through such horrific trauma, but at the same time just really funny. And it just reminded me of the original show, and I really enjoyed that. They were able to keep the same humour and not do the original show a disservice, and unlike other revival shows, actually keep that humour alive and not just feel it's lost its edge or it's gone bland, which a lot of revival shows have had. Not only that, but I really enjoyed seeing these characters and realising that 20 years later, the majority of them have not changed whatsoever. Whether it be Malcolm and his neuroses, Lois with her overbearing and controlling nature, or Francis, who is just desperate for nurture and attention from his own mother. But what I really enjoyed and what surprised me the most was how they dealt with Reese. As at first you think that he has evolved, he's become better, and that he's got a genuine relationship with Hal, and they both are enjoying this, unlike in previous times. But you then realise that Reese is actually manipulating and using Hal, as he is accident prone, which he is using to his advantage, and it does make you laugh, and it's nice to see that 20 years later he's still his genuine self, which most people may not like, but I really loved. Something which actually took me a bit by surprise is the new freedom this show has when it comes to swearing, as the original show pushed its limit when it came to violence, and they were brilliant at it. But when it came to the language side of things, I think they not wanted to push the envelope, but they couldn't. While in this, they are given that freedom too, and it's not like they exploit it and go and use the F-bombs whenever necessary, but instead they are allowed to use the word shit and asshole on occasion, which at first does take you by surprise. As again, this is not that particular show you would think that would use that language, but when it does, it's not like to be provocative, it's actually used properly well. Story-wise was quite hooking. We're seeing Malcolm being somewhat normal and calm, and it changes once he meets up with his family and they're back in his life, as we see him reverting back to his original self, that being a very over-analysing, self-embarrassment type of person that we have grown to love in the series. And I really enjoyed seeing that journey of how we first see him in the very first episode to how he is at the very end, and that journey was brilliant to me. And also, it's nice to see breaking the fourth wall is actually genetic, as not only does Malcolm do this continuously, but his daughter Leah is also doing it as well. And we see a lot of similarities between the two, how she is now and how Malcolm was in the original series, both overthinking a lot and the loneliness they suffered in their teens. But I would say Leah is a bit more smarter with certain aspects that Malcolm necessarily isn't, that being the emotional side and recognizing facial expressions. The only difference is that I feel like while Leah can recognise facial expressions and emotions, she's just not that good when helping others in emotional distress, which is quite funny to see. But of all the characters, Hal was the more intriguing and, in my eyes, the funniest, as he goes through a barrage of situations, all of which were traumatising and yet hilarious at the same time, and if anything made the show that more hooking from a comedy perspective. To me, the final episode was quite the watch in so many matters of ways. Firstly, it is a cameo-fested galore, seeing old co-workers and friends of the family returning, and upon first reaction, you're really quite happy to see these characters. But when looking into it or thinking about it, one question arose for me, and that is, why are they here? This is an anniversary for Hal and Lois, so I'm a bit confused to see why the friends of the children are here, like the Crownboy kids that Malcolm was friends with for a period of time, or old cadet buddies of Francis, or even co-workers like Gretchen from the ranch. It made no real sense to me as why Hal and Lois would invite these people when they had such limited access to these people or friendship. Then you get characters like Stevie and his family. That made sense to me, as for a small period she was like a supportive mother to Stevie in the series, but also at one period in time they were both friends with Kitty and Abe. So yeah, just a bit of confusion around that part. I felt a little bit disappointed that Malcolm did not spend much time with his brothers, especially with Reese, who I really like seeing when those two are together, yet we don't get much of that. But we do get a lot of time when it comes to Malcolm and Lois, and seeing him unload this 20 years of baggage and stress that he has had and unleashes it upon her, and then we see that get resolved. The episode also had this heartwarming message to Hal, who definitely deserved after what he went through in the last 3 episodes, and it was really quite nice to see how much everyone at that place showed their appreciation and love for him. And I really liked seeing Leah finally bonding with her Piblings and actually solving a situation that's happened in that episode and getting some really fun advice out of it. But it wouldn't be a family event without something going completely wrong, and boy did it, and they executed this amazingly well. While I will say there's a lot to love about this series, I do have a few gripes with the show, whether it be the fact that we don't really see the brothers really interact with one another, whether it be Reese and Francis, who do share a lot of screen time in the first few episodes, but then there's not much conversation with them. But to me, it's not seeing Francis or Malcolm or Reese really sharing moments together, as that was what the main series was about, seeing those three, and with Dewey, but obviously for obvious reasons, interact with one another and seeing the excitement. But sadly we just don't get that. We get little glimpses, but to me it was not enough. I was hoping for more chaotic adventures from the brothers, but if anything, Hal was the more chaotic one when expressing his love towards Lois, oftentimes embarrassing her in public, which while I enjoyed, I wish Reese had more involvement in the way of chaos. And I did feel very let down by the appearances of Dewey and Jamie, as I felt they didn't bring anything of interest to the series. And while I understand they're needed, otherwise questions would have been asked, they weren't that hooking to begin with. But I felt they counteracted that with their saving grace, that being the new child they raised, Kelly, who I thought was more of a cooler character to dive in, and their beef with Reese and finding out who they are is themselves, but also in the family, was more interesting to me. And lastly, the length of this show. 4 episodes does feel quite small, and whilst I will admit it didn't feel bloated, I just felt disappointed that we don't get more time to spend with these characters. And I really do hope, at least from a fan perspective, that this is more of a taster, and if done successfully well, they will get more episodes to explore this family again, as if this is the ending, I feel a bit disappointing, as while I enjoyed it, it just feels completely unnecessary in comparison to the original ending that we got, which I thought was brilliant. Overall, I really did enjoy this series. It was nice to explore these characters and all the flaws that they have, and there's a lot of humour to go with this. I just wish that we got more episodes out of it. That's really my biggest critique and my issue with the series. With all that being said, is it good? Honestly, yeah, it's very good. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. Now, would I rewatch it? I'm going to be honest and say it's a maybe. Besides the story and how, there's nothing really making me want to rush back and rewatch it, personally. Now, when it comes to recommendations, Malcolm in the Middle is obviously going to be the first one. It's a great comedic show, and it pushed the needle of sitcoms today and how we look at them. Bryan Cranston, not only is he hilarious and can show a lot of emotional depth, which he did in this series and in the original series to a lesser extent, there's many things I could recommend from him, especially the big TV show that he is now known for. But I want to recommend an episode which actually blew him up career-wise, and that is the reason he got Breaking Bad and so forth. That being in X-Files Season 6, Episode 2, as we see him playing this quite unlikable character at first, but as the episode goes along, we grow to really like and enjoy this character and really root for him, even though the odds are against him. And then when it comes to Jane Kaczmarek, I do apologise if that's not how you pronounce it, she's great in this and in Malcolm in the Middle, but I think most people also recognise her voice as she is in The Simpsons for numerous episodes playing the Judge Constance Harm. I really love her appearance, and anytime she appears I do get a little bit excited, and my favourite episode is her first ever appearance, that being in The Parent Rap, a hilarious episode that brought me tears when I first watched it, and I still enjoy it to this day. And then Frankie Muniz. Most people would recognise him from either this, or he did a lot of kid-friendly spy films and so forth in his younger years. But for me, I watched, obviously, Malcolm in the Middle, but there was an episode of Criminal Minds he appeared in, where he was this cool comic creator, but also kind of a criminal. And it's interesting to me that I either saw Frankie Muniz as a boy genius or a heinous killer. Definitely recommend that episode, do check it out. And then when it comes to revivals, there's a long list of revivals that have come back for like early 90s and 2000 shows that they've brought back, not done very well, and if anything did more damage to the original series. King of the Hill, on the other hand, is not one of those. While it did have a slow start, it found its feet with grace and did a really good job. And like this show, it got that freedom with language, but also like this show, they didn't exploit it like most other shows would. And then lastly, Scrubs. I'm going to be honest and say the 10th season is actually enjoyable, but like Malcolm in the Middle, I really enjoyed the original ending. It was beautiful and perfect. But this new series, they're adding some new stuff, and there's that familiarity with some of the older characters, and I'm enjoying it for that. I have no hatred towards it, unlike the spin-off, which I do. Those are my recommendations. This has been my review for Malcolm in the Middle, Life's Still Unfair. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like and subscribe, but most importantly, thank you and have a nice day.